felt still in the moment, and it felt as though what I was seeing wasn't real. I was looking for my mum to find out what the screaming was.
You feel like you're going to die. I was absolutely terrified of dying. I have had nightmares for most of my life. They terrify me. They make you not want to go to sleep. The earliest one I remember that was a reoccurring nightmare was from when I was aged 5. I remember it vividly. It involved a friend's place. The nightmare would actually take place beside their house every time I had the nightmare. Their house had a house behind them, but they had the driveway that went beside their house. I would close my eyes. I'm on this driveway. I have this massive boulder that is twice the size of me. The scary part about this nightmare was the fact that my legs weren't working. I had this huge boulder rolling towards me, and I couldn't feel my legs. They are just, they feel like they're not a part of me, they're numb. But the more I tried to run, the more they didn't work. I could feel my heart pounding. I could feel the adrenaline going through me. I was shaking. I was absolutely terrified of dying. It was the sound of the stone rolling on concrete behind me. The terror of not being able to move my legs and to be able to get away from something that you knew was coming. It was absolutely terrifying. And just as the boulder would just be behind me, I'd wake up. I would sit up in my bed and I would be terrified to go back to sleep. This reoccurring nightmare of a 5-year-old that I had up until I was about 10 or 11 years of age. It was the same thing over and over again. And I can remember each night, Mum and Dad would always come in every night and we would say our prayers. And one of my prayers was not to have this terrifying dream. For a 5-year-old, that's a pretty horrible nightmare to have. You feel like you're going to die.
"40 years later, Christina's still feeling highly traumatized by this dream, and you can feel the intense emotion and fear as she's talking. Kids at the age of 5 have got limited resources in terms of logic and reasoning, as their brains they're still developing. Kids may have difficulty in being able to rationalize their dreams. Therefore, the vivid, terrifying dreams at this age can have a lasting impact, as we're clearly seeing here with Christina. Now, the boulder represents a life challenge, and in childhood, it's what we call an Ericksonian psychosocial stage of development. Basically, we all go through stages in childhood, and we have to complete each stage. Now, from age 5 to 12, this is industry versus inferiority, and it's all about establishing competency, how you navigate the world. The boulder is something looming, something stressful in Christina's life, such as starting school, for example. Now, the not being able to move her legs, that suggests a lack of self-esteem, self-confidence, or a sense of independence. The not being able to run or move your legs in dreams, that is really typical of people who are not quite feeling up to the challenge and feeling overwhelmed and insecure. And kids who haven't dealt with many childhood fears may feel overwhelmed and insecure. So essentially, my take on this is Christina, at the age of 5, she may have been facing a very challenging situation and maybe just didn't feel she had the right skills and confidence to navigate the challenge. However, having said that, I have seen a similar dream in private practice of a client, and we did a lot of work, and unfortunately through much therapy we discovered that the source of her dream was far, far more sinister.
I had this nightmare when I was it started when I was about 10 years old, 10, 11. A recurring nightmare that I endured for about 4 to 5 years. It wasn't always great in my household on a day-to-day basis, so I do believe this definitely had an effect on my dreams, and this is probably why I had the nightmare. To me, it was just a regular night. I laid down to go to sleep, and I remember waking up in my own bed, in my own bedroom, in my own house, where everything just seemed like a regular situation, except the way I got woken up was irregular, because there was a lot of screaming, a lot of crying, wailing. It was sounds like if you'd hear from somebody that's life is in danger, somebody who is screaming for help. So I got up out my bed and I went to go and see how I could help my mum. I went to go and find out where the noise was coming from, what was happening. And my mum had a hallway set like a gothic kind of hallway, where there was gargoyles on the walls and candle holders, black candle holders on the walls. I was looking for my mum to find out what the screaming was. So I've gone over the banister, and the fact that I'm frightened of heights anyway doesn't help. So I've looked down and my heart is beating out my chest. I felt like I was going to be sick. I saw my dad standing there with my mum's body laying on the floor, and he was holding a knife. He was stood in a big pool of blood, which I imagined was my mum's blood. I just felt still in the moment, and it felt as though what I was seeing wasn't real. The blood was just sort of getting wider and wider on the floor, and then my dad is turned up and looked me dead in the eye, and that point that absolutely freaked me out, because I thought, oh my God, I'm next. He's coming for me. I can see him, and then I can hear him coming up the stairs with this knife in his hand that was about, I think it was about that big. And I just turned and ran in my bedroom, slammed the door. At that point, that's when I woke up. Every time I wake up before he gets to me. But when I do wake up, I wake up crying. I wake up sort of moaning, hysterically moaning, with tears coming down my eyes. My eyes are full of water. I get up and I go in my mum's room to go and check if she's all right. And she's laying on a bed and she's asleep. And at that point, that's when I realised that it's a dream or a nightmare. And the hardest thing for me is to see my dad after them nightmares, because I know that he wouldn't do that, and I know it's not real, but because I've seen it or because I've felt it, to me it's real, or to me it was real. So that's the hardest part, and that's the most frightening nightmare I have ever had. And thank goodness it stopped when I left that house.
Wow. There was a lot to that dream, and I'm going to really be careful what I say here, because I don't want to upset Ellie. She briefly mentions that things were not great for her growing up, and I'm so saddened to hear she went through this as a child. Without knowing more, it's difficult to comment, and I really don't want to make any assumptions here. Our 10-year-old brains are only able to process information in relatively simple terms and tend to deal in absolutes and emotions. Black and white thinking. Daddy is yelling, mummy's crying, therefore daddy is hurting mummy. She mentioned that her father would never actually murder her mother, which is relieving to hear. However, for a 10-year-old scared little girl, it may have seemed so intense that she feared for both hers and her mother's life. Living in that house, in that situation, it must have been a rough time. And I'm glad the dreams stopped when she moved.
Next on The Dark Dreamers.
It wasn't particularly threatening, it wasn't particularly violent, but was extremely sinister. And I felt not in at all happy about it.
I was sitting down in my lounge room with my mum once, and I told her I'm having these really bad nightmares, like I wake up sweating and sometimes screaming. And then she goes, oh, I had the same dreams when I was younger.